Hey guys, what's up? It's Alex or Nuzz here, and today's video is going to be a boss ranking, and we're going to be ranking the bosses in RuneScape by difficulty. So basically if they're super easy, beginner, intermediate, advanced, or expert. And this video is to kind of help you guys figure out, what level you're on and what bosses that you want to try to tackle, because a lot of people don't know the best route to go through PVM. They don't really know what bosses pertain to what difficulty and where they should start, where they should aim for, and stuff like that. So I actually have done a video like this in the past where I talk about the roadmap through PVM, and I'll link that at the end of the video and in the description. But this is going to be more of an overview of all the bosses, so you can see where they all fit in terms of difficulty. And I'm sure maybe some people have done this video before. I actually didn't look, but people may have done videos like this before. But I thought with new bosses coming out, and just giving my perspective on where things rank, because they're different for everyone. My list is not definitive, but yeah, we're gonna go through this here. So first we're gonna start with the Ambassador. So the Ambassador, I would say it is expert, especially solo. It is, it's pretty tough. But it could be advanced if you're in a group. So I would say if you're in a group, it would be an advanced boss, but if you're solo, it's definitely an expert boss. It has a ton of mechanics, ton of defensives, ton of DPS checks, all kinds of stuff, so that would definitely be an expert. Next we have Nex Aod. Now Nex Aod, I talked to a few people about this to see where it would rank, because I haven't done a ton of it, so I wanted some outside perspective. And basically what everyone said was like, it is expert in terms of requirements. You need really good gear, you need good DPS, but in terms of mechanics, it would probably be advanced. But I'm going to put it in expert just because, you do need really good DPS to get, decent times. You do need really good gear. So I would put that in expert, but it might be on the cusp. So next we're going to go with Corporal Beast. And for me, I would say Corporal Beast, I would say it would be probably super easy. Corporal Beast is something that you can AFK with the right revolution bar. You don't really need to follow a bunch of mechanics. There's maybe the core coming out, but all in all, I would say Corp is pretty easy, and you're not going to be learning a lot about PVM if you kill Corp. So next we have the Dagannoth Kings. I would put the Dagannoth Kings in beginner, and the reason I would put them in beginner is because you will have to, do some prayer switching. Because you're going to be killing different kings at different times. So you will be doing some prayer switching and stuff like that. You will be swapping gear. So it at least has a little bit of, stuff you have to do rather than just sit there in AFK. So I would put them at the beginner, but they're more on the easy side of beginner. Alright, so next we're going to look at the Twin Furies, and I would say the Twin Furies, they're pretty easy, but they would be at the easy level of intermediate. They're not at the, the top of intermediate looking at advanced. They're at the basically in between. They're probably the easiest God Wars 2 boss. You have to use melee, but they're really not that hard, so I would put them as intermediate. They're honestly a decent boss to start if you're trying to, go from doing the really beginner stuff to intermediate. I would say they're a decent boss. I would say the same with Vindicta. Vindicta might be a little bit harder because you're going to want to be using defensive mechanics like resonance and stuff like that. You're going to have movement running around. So actually, Vindicta is a really good boss. You can also prey flick there because you're going to have to be prey flicking the range attack as well. So Vindicta is actually pretty good, and I would recommend if you're trying to get into intermediate bosses, Vindicta is gonna, it's gonna learn you a lot. And I would say the same with Hellwear. Hellwear, you're gonna have to move a lot to get through some of the mechanics. You're gonna have to use defensives. You're gonna have decent DPS. You can prey flick, so I would say Hellwear is also a very good option. So those are pretty decent, and I'll just skip to Greg here. I would say Greg is also at intermediate. Greg is kind of, in my opinion, a little bit annoying. I don't really like killing Greg that much. In terms of mechanics, you will have some movement. You might not really have many defensives. I mean, you might use devotion and stuff, but, nothing crazy. So Greg is, I would put it, on the lesser end, but it's definitely harder than Twin Furies. So now we're going to move on here to the Giant Mole. And I was tempted to put Giant Mole in super easy, but I'll actually put it in beginner because it's actually a decent boss for learning, mechanics at the very, start of your PVM journey. You will use some defensives. You're going to run around a lot. It actually has, a fair few mechanics for being such a low level boss. So if you just want to get into a boss with some mechanics just to see, get used to, doing different things, running around, using movement, stuff like that. It's not a very dangerous boss, but it at least has some mechanics for you to try out. All right, so now we're going to go to the God Wars 1 bosses, and I am going to actually put all these in super easy. So the reason I'm going to put all these bosses in super easy is because you basically, it's no different than Corporal Beast. Some of them you can AFK, you really don't have to pay attention to any mechanics. You're basically just DPSing. That's all you need to know how to do is deal damage. You can eat if you want. Of course, that doesn't include the hard mode version of the bosses, but the normal versions, they're really just super easy, and they're basically DPS dummies, so there's not a lot to learn or follow there. Next, we're going to move on to the KBD, which I would put at the very top of super easy. They're just super easy. Basically a DPS dummy, like I said before. They have even less health than the God Wars 1 bosses in Corp. They have basically no mechanics, and I would actually say the same with Calfight Queen. Would be here too. So all these bosses down below at super easy are basically bosses that you're just gonna DPS. You're not really gonna have to worry about any mechanics doing anything. You're just gonna DPS them, and that's about it. The beginner bosses, you actually might have to worry about some mechanics. So now we're going to move on to Calfight King. So Calfight King, I would say for group mode, Calfight King would be an intermediate because it is much easier to kill in a group. However, if you do solo Calfight King, it definitely would be advanced because there's a lot of different things like bladed dive to avoid the green. There's a ton of different stuff you have to do to be able to solo it. Because it's not actually meant to be a boss that's soloable, so it would be advanced there, but I'm actually going to go with the group ranking just because I actually think for a group boss, Calfight King is a decent boss to try to, get into group PVM. It's actually a really good boss to try to get into group PVM because it's a boss that you'll actually have roles, so one person will have to be the tank, one person will have to take the green, there will be other people that are being, a DPS role, which is actually nice because it's an intermediate boss. It's not something like Nex Aod, but there are roles, so you'll have to get a team together, you'll have to give each other roles, you'll all have to, be accountable for, doing what you're supposed to do to get the kill. So I think it's honestly a really good entry into group PVM because it's not something like Nex where you can solo it easily and not many people are going to duo. This is something that a lot of people, if not the majority of people, are going to do in a group. So I think it's, like I said, a really good entry into group PVM. So next we're going to go with the Magister, and I'll put the Magister in intermediate. The reason I'll put it in intermediate is because, one, the requirements are really high in terms of Slayer. Two, there are a fair bit of mechanics. You don't really need to worry about them much if you have really good DPS, and I think that's the main reason Magister will be an intermediate. While it is a DPS dummy, you have to have a pretty good DPS to avoid all the mechanics, and of course the requirements are high, so I'd put this, kind of next to Twin Furies in that. Next, we're going to go with Nex. Now, this is one that I've really debated if I should put an intermediate or advanced. I would say, of course, in group, if you're doing this group, it can definitely be intermediate, but most people solo Nex, and I would put it in advanced just because it has kind of, you know, a lot of the things you're looking for when you're soloing. So you need to have movement, you need to run around the room, you need to kill minions, you will need to use defensives. You'll have a DPS check like at the blood phase where you have to deal out a certain amount of damage. You'll have to, you know, use defensives to avoid the ice prison. You'll have to switch your prayer for phases. So there are a lot of things that make Nex a really good boss to, you know, kind of go from God Wars 2 into that more advanced tier. So I would put Nex at the start of advanced, and it is a pretty good boss to, you know, have as a gateway to others. So QBD, I'm going to put QBD in beginner, and I actually think it's a good boss as well because it promotes running around using movement. You won't have to use tons of defensives, but you might have to kill minions, you might have to stand in a certain place. It is a pretty mechanic heavy boss, which bodes well. It doesn't have a lot of health, it's really easy to kill, but having it in beginner, I think this would be a really good boss to try to, you know, get started with PVM. Next, we're going to have Raxor, which I'm going to put in expert. Raxor requires defensives, DPS, requires prayer flicking, which is a huge one. Prayer flicking, prayer switching. A lot of movement, actually. Different things like running around collecting crystals and, you know, clicking, you know, different buttons on your screen and just a lot of stuff. So I would definitely put Raxor in expert, although it is a really good boss if you want to break into expert PVM, just because of all the mechanics, like I said. Next, we're going to go to a Raxor, which I'm going to put in advance with Nex. I think a Raxor is another one of those really, really good bosses to try to get from intermediate PVM to advanced. So a Raxor and Nex are really good. As like I said, they require movement, you know, defensives, DPS. Rax also requires prayer flicking on the last phase. So I would definitely put Rax in that next tier. So getting a move on here, we have Barrows Rise of the Six, and I'm actually going to put Rise of the Six in the intermediate tier, the top of the intermediate tier. I'm not sure. I kind of want to put it in advanced, but I won't. The reason being is because it's so fast. You can, you know, do rots very quickly. The fight actually isn't that long. It's another one that's good to get into as a group PVM type of thing, but there are a lot of mechanics and things to avoid. But I wouldn't quite put it in advanced. I would say it's really close. In terms of group, I would say it's harder than Calfight King, but it is, you know, not quite a Raxor or anything, so it's really close, but I'll put it there. Next, we have Siryu, which I'm going to go off the solo, so I would say this is actually a good one to put in advanced too. In group, it would probably be intermediate, maybe advanced, but we're going to go with the solo. So, you know, it has DPS checks, it has defensives. It's just all around one of my favorite bosses, honestly. You make really good money there, and if you're looking to break into advanced PVM, I would say Siryu is also really good. Blackstone Dragon, I'm going to put it in the top of intermediate. It's definitely the easiest elite dungeon boss to do, especially in group. It's really easy, but solo, it's much easier than something like Ambassador, and definitely easier than something like Siryu. So this is also, you know, Calfight King, Rise of the Six, and Blackstone Dragon are really good bosses to go from beginner to, to go from intermediate to getting to advanced PVM. You know, it's very good for groups. So if you know, want to start getting, you know, if you aspire to do like Nex Aod and, you know, group Raksha and, you know, stuff like that, it may be a good choice to start doing group PVM with Calfight King, Rise of the Six, or, you know, Dragonkin Laboratory, because, you know, they're just good group bosses and they're not extremely hard like Nex Aod and things like that. Sorry for rambling there, but we're going to move on to Solok. I would definitely put Solok in the expert tier at the top. This boss, you know, requires it all. You know, you can do it. You can do it with more people. There's DPS checks, really big DPS checks that will kill you. Insta-kill mechanics, different roles, just a ton of stuff. It's, you know, a really hard boss. It's a group boss. I would definitely put it above Ambassador, Nex Aod, and Raxor. So yeah, Solok is a group boss to strive for in terms of expert PVM. Next, we're going to go for Virago. And I was going to put Virago in expert, but I don't think I am. So I'm going to put Virago in advanced. And the reason I'm going to put it in advanced is because of the roles. So basically Virago has a bomb tank, a base tank, and DPS. Now, if you're a DPS, it's going to be way easier for you in terms of, you know, surviving killing Virago. If you're something like a bomb tank, that might be more of an expert role. Base tank, I would say, would be, you know, kind of at the top of advanced. So in terms of Virago, it is, you know, on the upper echelon of the group bosses, but it's not quite on the level of like Solok or Nex Aod. And the reason I'm putting it at the top of advanced and not expert is just because of the different roles you can have. Some roles may be easier than others. So the last boss we're going to be talking about here is Telos. Now, of course, Telos deserves to be in the expert. However, I want to talk a little bit about Telos. So Telos, you can start at 0% in rage and go to 4,000. So I would say 0% in rage is actually somewhere here. It's actually somewhere in intermediate, because for 0%, I can honestly do 0% with no food, probably no prayer, just avoiding, or not even avoiding, just taking all the mechanics, because he really doesn't hit hard at all at 0%. You're not going to have to deal with as many mechanics as you would before. Telos is a very, you know, frightening boss that people get scared of doing, but if you're in this tier, in the God Wars 2 Cowfight King type of tier, you can definitely do 0% Telos, maybe up to 50%. You might die a lot at first, but it's much easier than you think and much less deadly. Now, when we get to 100% Telos, we unlock phase 5, and that's when I would say it would go like around the Nex Aod Raxor mark, right here. And then when we get to something like 200 to 300%, I would say it surpasses Virago. And then once you get over about 300% Telos, I would say it hits that expert mark, where Telos has the, you know, most health he can have, has all his mechanics and stuff like that. And then when you get, you know, to the 1,000 in rage, 2,000 in rage, then you go to basically the hardest and most difficult boss in the game. So Telos, you know, has a lot of different, you know, things, but he's not just to one tier because of his enrage. So don't be scared. You can definitely do him at 0%, 50% if you're in the intermediate rank, and then you can do 100% if you're in that Rax Nex rank. And then once you get to over 300%, then you get to kind of the expert Raksha level. And then once you get above 500, 1,000, then you get to, you know, the super, super high tier. So there is our current rank. So you can basically say to yourself, you know, I've been killing a lot of QBD, a lot of, you know, the lower level bosses, God Wars 1. I want to break into that intermediate tier where you can look here at these bosses and decide, you know, which ones you think are the best. Same thing, if you're, you know, killing a lot of God Wars 2, you can decide, hey, maybe I'll try Siryu or Nex or Raxor. So I hope this is kind of a guide to help you guys out. I know it's a long video. I know it had a lot of me rambling in it. But you know, sometimes I like to do these videos. I did these when I started my channel. You know, they're less polished than my other videos because it's just me, you know, talking for 20 minutes straight about a different topic. But nonetheless, I hope this helped you out and I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you all in the next video.